here's one way of thinking about yourself. You're a clock, and you're wound up, and you wind down mechanistically. But the clock mechanism has to be there for you to wind down mechanistically. And unless you've practiced something a long time, it's not there. So I don't see how determinism can account for that. So here's an alternative, and you can tell me if this is in keeping with your experience. So you wake up in the morning, your consciousness reemerges from the darkness in which it's been embedded, like the sun coming up, right? Which is why consciousness has always been associated with the sun. We're daytime creatures, and we're creatures of vision. And so we identify consciousness with the light, with illumination, with enlightenment. You wake up in the morning, and what do you have in front of you? Well, it depends whether you're excited or worried, but it doesn't really matter, because it's the same thing. What you have in front of you, this is as far as I can tell, is that you have a field of possibility. You have a field of potential. You might wake up and worry. You think, well, I have to do this, or this series of negative consequences might emerge, and I have these obligations that need to be taken care of for the same reason. Duties, tax bills that have to be opened before they turn into some sort of terrible monster, or work requirements that need to be done for the same reason, to keep chaos at bay. And that'll run through your mind, and if it's overwhelming, if there's too much chaos in your life, you might wake up in the middle of the night and have all that running through your head. You have all this potential of what could be manifesting itself in front of you. And that can be very stressful. It can also be very exciting, right? Because the flip side of that obligation is opportunity, and so you see in front of you this field of potential that's opportunity. But what you see, as far as I can tell, with your consciousness is the potential that could be, right? You see a sequence of worlds that you have some causal ability to bring into being. And you act like that. You think, well, I have to do this because then this will happen, or if I don't do this, then this will happen. And hopefully, if you're not too skewed, most of the decisions you make are positive ones, because you want to take the potential that's in front of you, the chaos, and you want to turn it into a reality that's good. And most of the time, you're going to assume, although you may be tempted not to from time to time, that the best way to do that is to confront that potential forthrightly and to deal with it in a positive and truthful manner, and that the hopeful consequence of that will be that, well, even if you don't produce something good, it will be less hellish than it might have been, right? But maybe you'll get lucky because you're focused and you're doing your best and you're confronting what's there as potential, and you turn it into something good. And then you can live with yourself properly. And you don't wake up in the middle of the night and bemoan your lost opportunities and your lost possibilities. And so I think that what we are as individuals are spirits that confront the potential of reality and transform it into the actuality of reality as a consequence of our ethical decisions. That's what it looks like. And I think that that's why there's an insistence in Genesis that we're made in the image of God, because we're partaking in the same process continually. And you think, well, do you believe that? Well, let's look at how you act. I mean, the first thing is you tend to think of your kids as full of potential, and you tend to think of the world that confronts them as full of opportunity. I mean, or full of potential, for that matter. And the whole potential thing is a very strange notion, and we don't think about it much. And I think it's mostly because we're materialistic. It's like there's nothing material about potential. It's not here. It's not here now. It's out there, whatever that means, in the future, with no qualities whatsoever except our apprehension of it. It has no weight, it has no mass, it has no being whatsoever. It's just what could be. But we treat it as if it's more real than anything else, what could be. And then if we have children and they don't live up to their potential, they don't take advantage of their opportunities, then we're angry at them. We say, you had this potential that you could have done something with and you didn't do it. and so that you've sacrificed your own potential by not taking advantage of this opportunity, and you've made yourself in the world less than it could be. And you're never happy about that, not when you're dealing with someone that you love. You're always upset because you see very clearly that they are not being who they could be. And you see very clearly that that's a downward path. And it's definitely not something that you want for your children. Then you think too, well, what about how you treat other people, yourself? Well, conscience is a good example of that. You let an opportunity go by, so you have some potential that manifests itself in front of you as a doorway through which you could pass, and maybe you forego the opportunity because you're faithless and afraid. And I mean, that happens to everyone, but it doesn't mean that you're going to let yourself off the hook for that. You know, if you look at older people and you ask them what they regret in their lives, it's not the opportunities they took, it's the opportunities they could have taken and didn't. And it's because I believe that deep in their conscience, part of our structure, our deep, deep structure, we have a known moral obligation to take what's offered to us in its full catastrophe and to make the best of it, and to do that properly with our ethical choices, and that we do not let ourselves off the hook if we fail at that. And then I don't believe that we can organize our human relationships without believing that, because, well, if I believe you have no agency and no capacity for your own choice and your own, I believe you have no ability to transform the future into the present, into the reality of the present, you're going to react to that like it's demeaning and patronizing. I have to treat you like a moral agent of worth. I have to do that to me. I have to do that to my kids. I have to do that to my friends. And if we do try to establish a community, like a political community, and we don't use that as an axiom, then the political community is a bloody catastrophe. And so that's part of what makes me think that this sort of thing is real. It's like, well, it's real enough so that it governs your relationship with yourself, whether you want it to or not. It's real enough that it governs your relationship with your children and the rest of your family. It's real enough that if you don't build your political system with those self-evident axioms, then you just get a catastrophic tyranny. It's like, that's pretty real. So those are the self-evident propositions. And so I've been talking to people and trying to remind them of this, because we're in danger of losing this, and we shouldn't be losing it because there's something about it that seems to be correct. I think people are afraid of it, and they should be. I mean, one of the statements with regards to my introduction was that my observation as a clinician was that no one ever got away with anything. And I believe that. I've seen that, because you make a mistake, especially a conscious mistake, and you think you've got away with it, and you wait. It'll come back years later. Something you bent the fabric of reality in some manner, and in the short term you got away with it. No one noticed, but that has consequences that unfold, and sooner or later the chickens come home to roost. And sometimes it takes years, if you're doing therapy with someone and they've gone off on a very bad pathway, to trace all the decisions all the way back to that one decision you made that you knew was wrong when you made it, and you made it anyways, and then you forgot about it because you don't remember every decision you make, and your life has gone off astray in some terrible manner. I've been suggesting to people, and I'll close with this. First of all, you have this moral obligation because you have this potential in front of you, and the hypothesis is that you should be approaching that, let's say, with courage and truth, and transforming it into the best that you can transform it into, because that's actually the world. And you do that locally. You do that to the limits of your power, and sometimes you don't have much power because you're not that competent, and sometimes you have a lot of power and you're very competent, but it doesn't matter. You have a certain amount of potential at hand, and you can either transform it into the order that's good, or you can do the opposite and generate a little bit of hell right here and now. And if enough of us do that, then we get a very large amount of hell right here and now. And we've seen that multiple times, particularly in the 20th century, with the establishment of great totalitarian regimes that were based on nothing but lies, that were as close to hell as anyone could possibly desire, short of metaphysical reality. But it's worse too. It's not only, I think, that you're called upon, this is a responsibility. You're called upon to act ethically in the face of this potential that confronts you, so that what you produce is good. But there's a part of that that's worse, that's more burdensome than that even. Because that's burdensome enough. Make a mistake, bring something into reality that shouldn't be there. And then it's there. And then it's there to plague you, and it's there to plague the people around you, and it's not going to go away till someone fixes it. So that's a scary thing. But the other thing is that even if you fail to take the responsibility that's laden upon you, to use truth, to structure possibility properly, then you leave a hole in the structure of being that you could have filled with something good. And it doesn't just stay there as a hole, it's that you invite something that's terrible in to take its place. And that's what happens when people become bitter and resentful and cynical, because they've been hurt in their lives, and they start to use deception, and they start to deviate from the desire to confront the potential that surrounds them properly and to make things better. They look for revenge. They look to hurt. They develop malevolent motives. And then not only are you not bringing into the world what could be good and sustaining, but you're inviting into the world what can definitely be hellish, is the only way to properly conceptualize it. And so I think that there isn't anything more meaningful or real than the idea of individual sovereignty, and that it's mostly predicated on, not on rights, but on responsibility, which is where our cultural conversation has gone wrong, because we've been talking about rights forever. It's like you have a responsibility. You're given a modicum of possibility to play with in your life, to do something with, to build something with. And what you build is dependent on your ethical choices. And it's the sum total of those ethical choices that create the world. And then I'll close with this.